Well, first, thanks very much for having me. I am indeed going to be speaking from the point of view of someone who has been working and living in Scotland for, well, forever, but particularly for the last 10 years. I've worked as a poet, a poetry educator, as a live literature programmer, so I've always been 100% freelance for the last 10 years, working across loads of different aspects of the literary arts, the theatrical arts, festivals, books, and all of the rest of it. Over the last 10 years, I've watched very slowly as first principles stuff has been undermined at all levels of the literary arts in Scotland. And Scotland offers a really useful microcosm for how things can go awfully wrong when you've got a very incestuous political culture intertwined with the cultural landscape too. Those of you who have visited the Edinburgh International Book Festival will know that Nicola Sturgeon does chair, for example. Questioning the chief mammy has got people into lots and lots of trouble over the last 10 years. But to return to first principles stuff, there is simply no way to be a writer of anything. Creative writing, theatre, plays, poetry, performance poetry. Now, don't judge me. Performance poetry can be really good, all right? All right. I worked really hard to make performance poetry cool, right? So give me a break. Anyway, there's no point in doing any of that unless you're going to commit to first principle stuff, which is freedom of expression. When you've got huge cultural schisms happening, for example, in Scotland, as we have had over gender identity, over the GRR reform, you have to, if you're a writer, look at these complex things that are causing a lot of people to go, slightly mad at each other, and be willing to courageously look at them and work out what's happening. There is no point being a writer or an artist and turning away from complex social and cultural schisms. I didn't leave, for example, I was a high school teacher at one point. I did not leave one of the last jobs in the Western world that gives you a pension in order to compromise on my freedom of speech. Unfortunately, a lot of my former friends and colleagues have. They have looked at these issues that are causing so many political storms and said, I want to run away from that. And I'm going to turn away not just from the issue itself, but I'm going to turn away from violence against women who are willing to speak about it. I'm going to turn away when people are attacked and are written, the new literary art form that is growing in Scotland, the open letter. It's got very specific sort of little patterns that you can notice. I've in my book Hounded, Women Harms and the Gender Wars, I've done a comparative analysis of quite a few of them, and they do use a lot of the same language. And actually, the similarities between how a lot of people who are apparently at the top of the literary arts is something I've noticed too. I am bored out of my mind. A lot of people, because they are so scared and they are self-censoring, as Ella said, a lot of the things that are getting written about do tend to follow similar patterns. And this is because to have a healthy literary ecology, you need the writers, okay? So obviously, first principle stuff. You need people actually writing and creating and making interesting work. But then you need curators who are brave and will go, oh, that's interesting. I'm sure our audiences want to hear that. So you also need interested audiences, and audiences who, want to be challenged and who won't sort of use the heckler's veto to shut everything down as well. That's a very important point too. And you also need a sort of a network of, courageous promoters, festivals, all these kind of things, in order for there to be any point at all in, dedicating yourself full time to being a writer or a poet or whatever. You don't do something as mad as dedicate yourself to such a precarious life in order to compromise. I will repeat that again and again and again. And I say this to younger writers that I've mentored. There's no point. Go and retrain as a plumber. Go and work in a garden centre. Do anything else with your life. If you are willing to compromise on freedom of expression, you're not cut out to be a writer. So that is what I would say. I'll just finish up with just one sentence just about the Salman Rushdie. When Salman Rushdie was attacked, Nick Barley of the Edinburgh International Book Festival and then Chair Alan Little both made very big speeches supporting Salman Rushdie. However, you will note, if you're paying attention, that no gender-critical feminist has ever appeared at the Edinburgh International Book Festival since I was there in 2019. So I will finish off there.